look holding that.
Yes. There's the old lady.
Yes. So now we're live again.
We're back.
Our apologies, but no one else is back yet because they lost the stream. So
You can cut that out,
we
right?
keep talking. No, this is permanently cut out.
Ah,
It's anyways, let's just begin again.
okay.
Because, at least it'll be useful in the future. So, hello, welcome to Gary's Guitars YouTube stream. We had a technical difficulty, and we're back. Hopefully, some of you will join us again. And while I do this technical stuff here, Gary, can you yap for a second?
We thought we might talk about truss rods, which we did before the thing stopped working.
Yes.
But as many of you probably know, a truss rod is a threaded rod that runs the length of the neck and is anchored at one end, usually this end, but sometimes this end with an adjustment here. Then there's in this guitar neck, there's a hole here where you can put your Allen wrench or nut driver type thing and turn the truss rod. You can sort of get an idea of where it is on a Fender neck. Frequently there's a skunk stripe. So they make the neck, they route out a slot, they put the truss rod in that slot and then fill the slot with contrasting wood. What the truss rod does basically is it balances the curvature of the neck with the string tension. So if your truss rod is off and you tune your strings up to pitch, it might pull it up. It might not pull it up enough. It might be backbowed. So you adjust the truss rod to get a little bit of relief or curve. So it's depending on the size of your strings, what you're tuned to. If you're doing drop C or something, it's going to be a lot less tension than standard. So it's a balancing act, briefly.
Okay, so we're back on, but we did lose some of our friends on the other part of the live stream, but we'll just keep going on, pretending like they're still there. So, so truss rod adjustments we were talking about in New England.
Right.
We do 4 to 8 a day. People commonly walk in and say there's something wrong with my guitar, and it's like, well, that time of year. What else did we want to? Oh, and there's before we were rudely interrupted. I was asking about how often you find that the truss rod is maxed out or about to be maxed.
Yeah, frequently. And with the, I hate to say the quality of the wood, but the processing of the wood maybe being not as good as it used to be. They tend to bow more and back bow more than they used to. So new guitars frequently need lots of adjustments. And frequently you find that somebody else has already tightened it or loosened it as far as it could go or really close, but there's still a bow in it. And so you tighten it the rest of the way. If you need to, there's a clamping trick to force the neck into a back bow and then maybe get a little more bite on the rod. So usually you can get it close, but then your truss rod is on, and if it moves again, there's nothing much left to do. Sometimes with some guitars, probably not this one, you can actually remove the adjustable end of the rod, put some washers in there, and buy a little more bite or turn. So that's a whole other subject of why old guitars are better than new guitars.
And then once again, we're here to answer questions. So you can ask a question, just leave a question in the comments, and we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. It's just guitar talk, talking about guitars.
The other thing to mention about truss rods and necks in general is not only bowing, but what we call, and I think is commonly called, prop twist, which is when you look down the neck, I'm looking down the sides of the neck on the bass and treble side. This is left-handed, bass and treble. Sorry. Sometimes you see not only a bow this way or that way, but a twist like an airplane propeller, thus prop twist.
Yeah. It often follows, the headstock follows suit. The entire thing will have the twist in it.
Sometimes you can see it in the headstock.
Yeah.
And a truss rod can sometimes, I've seen noticeable prop twist, and you turn the rod the right way, and it actually kind of goes away.
Yeah.
It's almost mysterious.
Yeah.
So that
Once
tells
attention
me
gets
it's
on it, yeah.
grain of the wood, it's moving differently. But, basically one side of the neck has 3 big fat bass strings and the other side has 3 thin treble strings. So there's more pull on one side than on the other. So
Let's talk about the dangers of adjusting your truss rod. Because when I was 18, I had an old Japanese guitar, my friend's old Japanese guitar. I tightened the truss rod, the neck got straighter. I thought, this is great. So I kept cranking on it, and
snap,
pathui.
you broke it.
Yeah, I broke the truss rod.
I've never done that.
Yes. Well, I was just, I was a kid. What did I know?
Right.
If a little bit's good, a lot of it's going to be great. Yeah.
Right.
And so there is a danger. You can over tighten your truss rod, and it will ruin the anchor. It can chew away at the inside where the anchor is anchored. You can chew out the threads a little bit. You can actually damage the whatever, if it's an Allen wrench or it's a nut on the end. You can strip the side of that. So you got to be careful.
That's probably the most important tip for adjusting truss rods is have the right tool.
Yeah, make sure you get the right
tool,
one.
and you spin
You slip a little bit,
and then nothing's going to work.
Yep, that is for sure. And they're all slightly different. In different guitars, you can't say, "Oh, it's a Gibson guitar," or Gibson's actually a little more consistent, but Fender has 10 different truss rod adjustment sizes.
Well, maybe not that many, but
6.
yeah. I have a pile of truss rod wrenches.
Yeah, Allen wrenches. Yeah.
Because you need them all eventually. When I was in high school, I was asked to join a friend's band as a bass player. I said, well, I never played bass. I don't have a bass. He said, no problem. Our old bass player is leaving, and he said you can buy his bass for $25. Great. So I bought his bass for $25. It was a 1959 P bass. I almost instantly hated it because it was so hard to play. Like struggling playing with the thing, and it was awful. I knew nothing about guitar repairs. I didn't know there was such a thing as guitar repairs. So I traded it in. I think I got $100 in trade, and I bought a Guild, I forget what model, simple electric bass, and it was great. Then a few years later, somebody told me they got their neck adjusted and it played better. I went, oh, no, that's probably all that bass needed. And then about 10 years later, I went, that was a 59P bass and it needed a neck adjustment. And I paid $25 for it. And I traded it in for $100. Oh my God. So it can make a big difference.
Sorry, I'm messing with this tablet over here. Trying to get the chat up over here. But
no
all right, so that's
you had another topic?
Yes. There's something a little more broad. Apparently I've accidentally become the Guitar Center whisperer because I made a couple of videos about Guitar Center and their business model and being owned by private equity and what that really means. And that's led to a lot of people asking me questions online about this stuff, and getting video views is fine, but and it's interesting to me because the reason I know about this stuff is I'm in the guitar music store business. I really got to know what's happening.
And you know a bunch of guys that work at Guitar Center 2 miles.
Exactly. Shh. They all shop here, but don't tell anyone I said that.
I don't know who they are.
But first I wanted to talk about, because you're here, talk about the music store industry.
Wow.
Because I remember your story is when you started Garrett's Guitars, there were 5 music stores.
I was number 6 in a town of 20,000 people. We had, this was before Guitar Center, but there was a Wurlitzer, a big Northeast chain. There was a Daddy's Junkie Music, and 3 others. And yes, the business was booming, even though it was a recession, 1989. Not the greatest time, but there were enough musicians around. And the reason I opened the store was I was a working musician working in another music store. And I saw that me and all my friends didn't have a place to go to get our guitars worked on, and talk to the person, and it was warm and fuzzy. And so I had met Chris Pern, who was a luthier, master repairman from Peterborough, New Hampshire, who had just moved here. So I said, well, I'm thinking of opening a store. You want to have a shop there? And he said, great. So he was the main reason I think that I did it. I'm not sure if I would have done it without Chris.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's.
So we found this funky space I think the shop was bigger than the store.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
3 of us ended up working in there, and we did some retail stuff. And now, 30 years later, all those other stores are gone.
30 something. Well, actually, so not only are they all gone, but there's one time you were the only guitar store in town at all after Daddy's went.
For about a year, Daddy's was gone, and Guitar Center hadn't moved in. It was for me, it was kind of retail panic. I was used to a much slower pace.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Spend as much time with each customer as you need, and all of a sudden there's 5 people lined up who want to buy the same guitar, and they're not asking questions, and I don't have time to answer them anyway. So
yeah, so there's a bigger thing in the music. So it used to be, and I personally hate the term mom and pop shops, because first of all, my wife wants nothing to do with a guitar store, so there's no mom in this pop shop.
that's your thing.
Yeah. But also, it kind of like, and people like this image. It conjures up the image of this elderly couple just with dusty stuff all over the place, just trying to get something, trying to sell something for all of their work. And, lots of music lessons in the background and some organ sale, I don't know, band instruments. And that's kind of not what we're aiming at here. So, we like to be a guitar store that's, a hub, and we like for there to be we like for when customers come in here and say, oh, we went to the big store, we like this one better. That's it. So not even just, oh, it's a mom and pop store, it's okay, they're just getting along. We're trying to compete on a real basis. So get that off my chest. So, but the independent music store is waning.
Yeah, well, 15 years ago, I think there were 50 some music stores in New Hampshire, which is not a big state.
Yeah.
Now I think there's maybe 30.
I would guess less, but I'd guess
less.
half of that. But still, yeah.
And 3 of them are probably Guitar Center.
Yeah.
And they, it dropped slowly after 2008. The housing boom, the guitar crash, guitar values blew up the wrong way. And nobody had any money, and stores started going away. And anyways, then Guitar Center moved in to New Hampshire, and a few more closed. And so it's, but there's way more independent stores than there are chain stores now. With Daddy's gone.
Yeah.
Relatives is long gone. Sam Ash has never made it up here for some reason.
There's a Boston chain. Wasn't another Boston area? Was there? Well, was there a Mars Music in Boston?
No, nobody else. Wurlitzer and Guitar Center are the only.
Yeah.
And Wurlitzer wasn't a big chain. It had maybe 5 stores, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's for a few years in the teens, it was looking dubious as to whether this was a viable business anymore. I remember thinking, well, retail might be over. Repairs, working on fixing things, that's still pretty good. Maybe I just need a smaller space, rent a room somewhere, and fix guitars and amps. But it changed.
Yeah, it has changed. It really has. And the pandemic is some of it. We got a lot of new guitarists coming in. A lot of people like, hey, I either want to get this old guitar going or I want to start guitar. So that's good for the guitar.
Community.
Yeah, I'm obviously, since I'm betting on the popularity of the guitar to continue on, but it's just the nature of retail now. Especially, people are more likely to order things. We had twice this summer. Speaking of truss rods, this is a truss rod story and an online sales story. A guy comes in, he goes, "Hey, I just got this guitar. It doesn't play so well, you know." And so I open it up. It's a high end Martin. It's a maybe I don't know, 35 maybe, you know, but something.
Well, okay.
You know, not the 15, not
Right.
the, you know,
A D35.
D30. That's what I should say. Yeah. And so, anyways, I took out this guitar. It looked great. I'm like, oh my god, the neck is bent. And I went in and did the truss rod adjustment. I had to do like a bunch of turns to straighten it out. And I was like, I don't know where you got this, but you might want to return it. This one, you know, I had to, you know, adjust the truss rod quite a bit to straighten the neck. And then you could run out of adjustability in the first couple of years, and then your neck will just be bent forever. And I said, "Where'd you get it?" And he said, "Oh, I bought it on Amazon." I'm like, oh, okay. I'd return this one, try to get another one. And he did. And he came back with another one, and it was fine. But that kind of thing, you know, buying a guitar on Amazon, first of all, who would buy a guitar on Amazon? I never heard of it happen, like buy a nice guitar. But someone did, and they almost got in trouble doing it.
Well,
So,
well, I've been saying forever, guitar is one of the, well, probably any musical instrument is something you want to hold before you buy it.
Yeah.
They're all different.
even if you don't play guitar, this is kind of like someone who just like is first playing a guitar, you can hardly, you know, doesn't even know how to hold it. You put some different guitars in their hands and they react to them differently.
Oh,
And they
yeah.
go, oh, no, this one, I like this one. You
You
know?
get the 10-year-old with his Christmas dreadnought,
Yeah.
which his arm is like this.
You can't even.
I think
get
it's
around
too
it, yeah.
big. Where'd you get it? Oh, my parents bought it online.
Mhm.
So, yeah, you want to try it and hold it and look at it and smell it and whatever.
All right. So we talked about music store history, and the other part of that was we talked about this store's history. What else about the future? I guess. What do you predict
Me?
will happen? Yeah. What do you think? You've been in this business for 40 years, right?
I predict there's a bunch of new guitar players around.
Yeah,
I
and
bet I
that's good
sold
for
50 guitars in my part-time time here
Yeah.
last year to beginners or people, you know, I got nothing to do. I played when I was in college and I need a guitar. So there's a new batch, which is great because before that, the guitar was definitely on the decline. It's not appearing in popular music very much.
the guitar. The guest rapper destroyed the guitar solo.
Have you seen the Rick Beato video where he adds guitar parts to modern
pop songs.
songs?
Yeah, no, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Oh, that's way better. There's a real instrument there.
Oh, we do have a question about this store. John Webb's asking, did we ever sell CDs? The answer
So
is yes.
local CDs.
Well, even for when Rock Bottom Records closed, so these black things in the middle of the room are actually Rock Bottom Records record bins that were given to us. And Rock Bottom Records closed,
right?
And Kevin from Rock Bottom put a bunch of guitar orientated music in here. Yeah.
Yep, that was for a while.
Yeah, and then there was local CDs, but unfortunately, local CDs don't sell that much. Plus, it became a chore to try to keep track of all the people.
I mean, I stuck it out for quite a while, and then the CD died. Then it didn't matter what it was; nobody was buying it. So
CDs will be back, though.
Oh yeah, people still ask.
That's my guess. That
where's all the local CDs?
Well, I mean, just in general, it's just like there's a vinyl craze right now. Give it 10 more years, there's going to be a CD craze. I'm putting it on the record.
You said that about cassettes last week.
Cassettes are back. You didn't even know
they're
that?
back?
They are back
already. You could buy a new cassette, but
you can buy. So the indie rock
cassette player.
Well, that's the thing. Working cassette players are getting difficult. No, you can buy a little Walkman now for $30 online. Right. They still make them. Vintage Walkman are $200, $300. Vintage Walkman from the 80s are a whole bunch of money. And people are making cassettes and they're putting them out, especially the Brooklyn style indie rockers. They love cassettes because it's such a niche thing. You can just make them in your house too, and and they hand draw the covers, and they
tape.
Fold up the
magic
J
of
cards
tape
themselves. Yeah, and it's tape. It's analog.
Yeah.
So I believe cassettes are back and CDs will be too. We got another question from Andrew. Oh, actually, before we get to Andrew's question, Derek Ham says CDs sound the best. That is kind of true. Now, wait a minute. That's blasphemy. I'm an analog guy. I got a record player. I've had a record player since I was a child. I've never not had a record player set up in my home. And I still got. Oh, I got records that from the '70s that were. My dad worked at a radio station. He would bring home. I got the 12-inch of David Bowie's Heroes, and it was given to me when I was 6 years old, and I still got it. Anyways, but the idea that CDs sound good is kind of a thing, even though it's 1979 technology. Digital music has not gotten better since. Digital music has been a dumbing down of the quality, not going up on the quality. So we were talking about sample rates and bit rates. MP3s are don't sound as good as CDs, and other kinds of streaming stuff. CDs kind of sound better. So, but Andrew's going to ask a question here. Is it possible to buy? I guess it says buy, not but a tremolo bar for an acoustic guitar? Also, what's the strangest modification you've ever seen on a guitar?
Putting a tremolo on an acoustic guitar.
Will be, yes. If we do that, that will be the strangest.
I think I saw it once. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
A Wonder Bar? There was a Washburn Wonder Bar.
Well, like an arch top can have a
you could put a big speed on it.
But like on a flat top?
A rock and roll dive bombing whammy bar on there. Oh, boy. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, but it does sound like something Andrew
Remember
needs.
when people actually used the whammy bar?
That's true. Although maybe it's coming back a little now too.
Not much.
Yeah.
A little.
People think they need it. People come in here and buy them. I lost my bar and they buy it, and it's
right.
It's the big
then
lighter.
They lose it again because they never use it.
They don't use it. And then the other part of this is what's the strangest modification you've seen on a guitar?
It would be hard to describe. There's a picture of it on the computer. Remember that exploded? Was it a lead? It was an old Fender. It wasn't a Mustang. Might have been a lead.
Yeah.
And it was worthy of a museum. He had taken the body and chopped it into maybe 6 pieces, so decent sized pieces, and then with pieces of metal and screws, screwed it back together, but left maybe an inch gap between all the pieces. So it kind of looked like it blew up.
Bigger, yeah.
But it still worked. He didn't cut, where the pickups and the bridge were. It's just the bouts. So,
well, this is the time we got to bring up our old friend Bobby Hearn.
Yeah.
So Bobby was convinced. So Bobby has passed away for some time now, maybe 15 years or something.
Wow.
His name still comes up. He was a genius guitarist and a madman and a stonemason.
Record producer.
Yeah. His resume is wild.
Was almost the first rock act signed to Repurposed.
No, he was in the first act. Yeah, they got
signed?
signed by Repurposed for their first single, Freddie and Bobby. So he was the first act on Frank Sinatra's record labels. That was a rocker.
1958 or something.
Probably earlier, 6 probably. Anyways, he lived through the entire rock and roll era. But the reason I brought him up was he was obsessed with Danny Gatton, and he told the story. He loved to tell the story like that. Danny Gatton's Telecaster was the lightest guitar on earth. That thing was like a feather. It would just float away. Heavy Maine accent. The thing was like a feather. It just floated. If you let go of it, just float away. And so that sounds a little too much like Bernie Sanders and not Bobby Hearn. But yeah, so like a feather, like a horse feather. So what he decided is that he had to make his guitar lighter, and the way he did this was with I think a 1 inch drill bit. Yep. And a drill. And he drilled the hell out of that guitar.
21 holes?
Oh, was it? He went in through the top. He went in through the side. He went in through the back.
Straight through the body.
Yep. Just all the way through to lighten the guitar as much as possible.
It was the Swiss cheese Strat.
Yeah.
And it weighed nothing now.
Yeah. This thing weighs nothing.
It lets the notes out.
Yes, and so that would be a bizarre guitar modification that that anyone could try. Really, stay away from the pickup cavity
Right.
and get a drill out and just start removing wood. All right.
More
Yeah,
inquiries?
no, that was just Andrew saying thanks.
Oh.
So anyone else out there want to add to the conversation? Let me know.
I had a subject.
Oh yeah, what was that?
One that I have trouble with, but Marc knows probably everything about it. My generation.
Okay,
Um,
setting me up here.
I get the question from customers frequently. I want to get into effects. What should I get first?
Yeah.
So I go, well, Tube Screamer, Rat, Ibanez Delay, maybe a Boss Flanger, wah-wah pedal.
Yeah.
Well, what about the shimmer effect? And what about this
thing?
Strymon brand? And well, I don't really know. I mean, there's sort of like 8 basic effects maybe, and these are variations of them.
Combinations also
yeah,
of various effects. Yeah.
So what's the difference between an Electro-Harmonix East Drive and the Danelectro Overdrive?
All
Do
right.
they sound different? Which one should I get? The one you like the best? But Marc is really good at answering that question. So I thought maybe he could say, what's the difference between overdrive and distortion first?
Okay. So let's talk about it. So it is simple, and yet it's not simple. But the way I like to simplify it is kind of like on a color spectrum. So overdrive is just a little bit overdriven. Then there's distortion, and then there's kind of metal kinds of. And these words, there's no standardization of this. And then you have fuzz on the other end. Yeah.
Right.
And so you kind of have that, but those are all on a spectrum, and there's things that fit in between. Like my of a ZVEX overdrive that's kind of fuzzy. It's kind of like a fuzz, but it's called an overdrive, but it's more like a distortion fuzz. But let's not get confused with that. So there's a spectrum of overdrive. Then, but there are iconic distortion pedals. The Klon is one. The 08
808.
Yeah, 808
Predecessor
Ibanez.
to the Tube Screamer.
Yeah, the Tube Screamer. So Ibanez Tube Screamer family, like I call the MXR family. And then the Electro-Harmonix, they had the big muff. That's the fuzz. That was the fuzz. They invented fuzz back in 68 or whatever, 67. When I didn't invent fuzz, they made a fuzz that you could use. There was a fuzz that existed before, I think Vox made the Satisfaction guitar sound.
No, that was Gibson. I have
Oh yeah, okay.
cord hardwired in,
Uh-huh.
just one input for your guitar, cord to the amp, and hit the switch. Oh, that's how they did it.
Yeah, there was fuzz bass. Actually, Vox made a fuzz bass
Mhm.
that Paul McCartney played on "Think for Yourself."
Was it
by the
built into the
Beatles.
bass?
Actually, built into the bass. Yeah. And so, anyways, let's get back a little bit on that. So you got your kinds of muddying up the sound.
Right.
Then you have things that modulate the sound to make it swirl and come and go and up and down. Flanges, choruses, phasers, and that can all go into a family. And then you have your reverb and delay family all kind of fits together. So you got that family, and then you have pedals that are a combination. And so then once you start to combine these things a little bit, it gets, so if you have a delay that likes to put a little chorus on the delay, like I think on the Oceans series reverb from Electro-Harmonix,
yeah.
they have some of the, then it just gets endlessly complicated. But if you wanted to, so we sell a lot of Electro-Harmonix just because they're fun and they're pretty durable and they're kind of cheap for what they are.
I got history.
So yeah, there's definitely but we also carry Fender, MXR, Dunlop. What do you call the Dunlop brand? MXR and regular Dunlop buzz phase and a bunch of stuff. But if you want to try pedals, kind of divide them out and take one from each family. Get yourself, figure out what kind of modulation stuff you like. Try a few of those, maybe. Try different stages of distortion. Some people have 2 stages of distortion now a lot. I actually really like having boost and then distortion. And clean boost is a whole other topic. But we do have a question from the audience that we'll get to here. So I've been looking at the Fender Ventira 50s series guitars. The truss rod is not accessible for adjustment. Do you remove the neck to adjust it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Had to be Leo Fender was first.
Yeah.
Because I think he was first, basically, with the bolt-on neck. On old Fenders and reissue Fenders of old Fenders and certain other guitars, acoustic guitars frequently, the adjustment is here. Am I holding this? Yes.
Yeah.
It's right here. There's no hole up here. So yes, you have to take the neck off. Frequently it's a X-shaped slot screwdriver adjustment.
Phillips, or slot.
Yeah, I use a flathead. It just fits better.
Yeah.
And that's where you adjust it. It's tricky because
Unlike
here, you're guessing. Okay, it feels like that might do it. You put your neck back on, you restring it, tune it up to pitch, and oops, not quite enough. Take the strings off. So, it turns a 10-second job into maybe 15, 20 minutes.
And that's when I would really bring my guitar to Gary to have him or here in the store, or any of us would do it. But that would justify someone who has a little experience in doing that, because there's a guest that has to do with it. Because what you want to do is you want to make sure you do not put your neck on and take it off too much, because there are no threads in the hole. The threads are just in the wood. There's no like threaded inserts where you can take this neck. You take the neck on and off 20 times and your holes will be loose. And so you got to be careful of that,
right?
Because then the neck can creep around a little. It will cause problems until it fails, and we've seen them fail too, probably, right? Just
Those holes?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they get plugged every once in a while.
Yeah, we got to fill them and re-drill them.
But on the truss rod side, people, when they ask me, can you show me how to adjust my truss rod? I want to learn how to do it. And I said, I don't even have to show you. I mean, it's so simple. But I show them. But then I have to warn them that every truss rod feels different. It's totally a feel thing.
Yeah.
This left-handed Fender Telecaster neck with strings on it will feel a certain way. The next one will feel slightly different. Some are really easy to move. Some are really hard. There's two-way truss rods, which are different from one-way. So I have to say, now go adjust the neck on 100 guitars and you'll begin to feel what it's like. Well, never mind, you do it.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it took me a couple of years probably before I felt like I knew what I was doing. Okay.
Yeah.
Before that, it was theory, and
I guess, right. It is a lot of nuance to it. Is when tuning up a guitar is like that's the carburetor in your, just getting that, just putting the right touch on that and getting it the right for that particular instance is a.
And if you are setting up your guitar, adjust the neck, well, pretty much first. Put your strings on, because if you set your intonation and your action, and then you adjust your neck, your intonation and your action is not right anymore. So neck first.
Yeah. So as for the older Fender, the Fender reissues, they do put the adjustment on the other side to be traditional,
right? To
be pre-CBS.
Well, Leo, I clearly remember him saying this somewhere in an interview, swore it worked better here. That's why he put it there.
Yeah.
Said, this, because the truss rod ends slightly before the end of the neck. And, it seems about the same to me, but he thought here it worked better than here. So I don't argue with Leo very often. So I'll take his word for it. But it is a pain.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a pain, but it's not crazy. It's not unheard of either. So,
or as we say here, how much do you charge for neck adjustments? Well, they're free unless we have to take the neck off.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it gets it out of the free category.
Yeah. There is that too, because then, of course, also your strings go nuts to go all over the place too.
Right.
Gotta be careful of that. All right, so William says thanks.
You're welcome.
Let's see. We're talking about, and luckily we get back on the truss rod thing, because that's another thing to cover there. And so there's another thing that popped in my mind about the truss rod. Oh, the funny thing is, I suspect, and you tell me if here's the wisdom of Leo Fender, that especially in these the original maple necks, The frets being put in sideways, and so they had to be driven out sideways to they weren't put in to be taken out. And I suspect that because it was a bolt-on neck, and Leo was such a designer, I think he just thought that once your frets wear out, you just change the neck.
Oh yeah,
I don't
yeah,
think
that
he
was
ever made them
definitely a
to.
thing.
Yeah, he didn't make them to be repairable.
Yeah, and ultimately the Ovation Celebrity Series.
Yeah,
with the
that's
molded
right, yeah.
metal neck. So the frets was all one piece of metal. What do you do when the frets wear out? Put a new neck on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hadn't thought of that.
Put a new neck on an Ovation. Good luck with that.
I have to say I never heard of putting frets in sideways.
Oh yeah, no, that was a thing. Yeah.
Even with the radius?
The original, that was because the frets would get radius, and then as they get pushed in, the radius would kind of get bent into them or something.
Oh,
Yeah, no, the original Fenders, they were. That's why if you ever see an old pre-CBS Fender with the fingerboard really chewed up, it means that someone tried to pull the frets out, pulling up on them. Which because they didn't go in this direction, they don't have the extra little bit of room to from being forced in this direction, and so as they get yanked up, they do terrible things. They go flying everywhere. And it wasn't just Fender. There's other companies. I remember there's an acoustic guitar I came across that someone got halfway through a refret, just ruining the neck. It was one of those Koa guitars, the Conservatory of Hawaiian. What was that? Remember that?
Oh,
Yeah,
we had one in here
Hawaiian Conservatory of
years
Music.
ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
And those, that one that I came across, that just the first 5 frets were someone tried to pull them out, and they were just destroyed. So do not pull the frets straight out of your vintage
You're
Fender.
blowing my mind.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I can't even imagine it.
Yep.
Sounds way
They're
too hard.
driven in sideways. I think Dan Earlywine has a video
Really?
where he has a vintage Fender and he puts in the frets sideways because that's how they got to come out that way, and they go. Okay, and we have another question. What's the coolest guitar you've had in the shop? I got one answer for this.
Well, are we doing personal opinion of cool?
I think personal opinion figures into cool prominently. Okay. So, but one just flashed into my mind. You can think for a second. I'll tell you mine. Right. I walked into at the old store. I walked into Chris's shop one day. I look on his bench, and Richie Havens' guitar is sitting on his bench. Wow. The one that he played at Woodstock, the Guild with 2 pick guards on it.
Yeah, boy, I forgot.
And I was like, "Is that Richie Havens' guitar?" And he's playing at the music hall, and I guess he needed something done.
His neck adjusted.
I don't know, but yeah, but I touched Richie Havens' guitar. Wow. Chris smoked over because Chris would smoke constantly while he worked, and the ashes from his cigarette would just kind of land in guitars. They just kind of flop around a little.
Maybe his calling card.
Yeah, just leave it. So he probably dropped some cigarette ashes in Richie Havens' guitar. So that's a cool guitar that was in the shop.
Yeah.
What else can you?
Well, I mean, it's not a particularly cool guitar, but a couple of weeks ago, somebody brought in a Linda Manzer guitar.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
I didn't think I would ever see a Linda Manzer guitar. She's a world-known high-end luthier in Toronto, I think.
Yeah.
Most famously built the Picasso guitar that Pat Metheny is maybe the only person in the world can play because it has 50 strings on it and 5 or 6 necks. So it's like, oh my God, it's a Linda Manzer. I mean, it was just her regular flat top acoustic, but so that was thrilling.
Yeah,
which is kind of cool. I guess I'm thinking of pointy guitars of the past. Some of the weird guilds from the 80s.
I think of other cool guitars.
There's been some, the plastic Supros, just the oddball guitars. I don't know. Nothing's really jumping at me.
And we have a few customers who are other customers who are kind of have a little bit of rock star status, that some of their famous guitars have been in here.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, that's when I think cool. It's like the guitar has pedigree. Like this is the guitar that I played on that record.
Right.
And that's pretty cool. You know, especially a guy like Richie Havens, who that guitar, was he ever seen without that guitar?
Not that I know.
Like I saw the guitar, and I'm like, where's Richie Havens? You
Yeah.
know, like,
Well, there was that 1957 Martin D28 that had never been played,
oh yeah.
which was pretty impressive. But then the guy who started the spiel, he got it when he was a kid, I think, because that's what Elvis Presley played, a 1957 Martin D28,
Mm-hmm.
and his parents got him one,
You never played it?
and it was like brand new. What's it worth? A lot.
Yeah. And then yeah, I guess that's. I mean, I think some cool guitars are like old Dan Electro basses that come through here. I love those things. You know, there's that other kind of cool.
Yes, funky cool.
Yeah, funky cool.
Japanese cool.
So that pretty much sums up that question. Anyone else out there? John Webb's asking about the B-Bender.
What about it?
What do you think about it? The hip shot, I think you're talking about?
About the Parsons White?
Well, I don't know. Tell us about it.
Oh.
You just said B-Bender with a question mark.
B-benders and similar things are attempts to make a 6-string guitar have the ability to do pedal steel effects, which is bending more than one string, but not all 6 at one time. So let's see. I think the Parsons White was first.
Mm-hmm.
Graham Parsons and Chris White from the Byrds.
Sounds right.
Graham Parsons and White. Country rock guys in the early days, late 60s, early 70s. I don't remember who made it. They had the idea. So they took a telly.
Oh, you made an old man sound.
Yep. And routed out a big thing in the back for this channel. Then it was connected to this strap button. It was connected to the strap button. So the strap button moved. So it's this arm going here.
We've had one of those in for repair in the past.
Yeah, they're around. Fenders made tellies with Parsons White.
Yeah.
And then 3 strings. I want to say the B, the G, and maybe the A, but I'm not sure. Each had separate things that you could pull to sharpen the string. So to go from a major chord to a sus chord, or to go from a 1 chord to a 4 chord without really moving your fingers like they do on pedal steel. And with your strap on and just pushing the guitar down, you would activate one of the strings here. There was a bar for one of the strings, and then the hip shot version. And I think
I'll be right back. Hold on.
The hip shot version was coming off of here was a bar. So again, you move the guitar, and that pulled the bar, and that flattened the string, if I remember right. So that was the origins of it all.
All right, you mentioned hip shot.
Oh yes, and
so speaking of madmen,
our friend Mike Endicott went on a quest
to make a lap steel that can do pedal steel tricks.
So this was a 2x6 that he cut out, magic marker frets, and he got the hip shot. It's missing the bar.
Yeah, the bar goes down here. So it's intended that you put it on your lap. And so his intention was you put it on your lap and use the hip shot to bend by moving your knee out like a lever on a pedal steel. And then this is a B bender. And so that can sharpen the B string.
Oh, you set it up left-handed.
Yeah.
Oh,
so this is what I was playing. Yeah, right. So you can basically do that the sus2, sus4 thing. So one's a sus4, one's a sus2.
Yeah.
And
well, they're adjustable. You can have
you can move them around
different things.
Yeah, well, that's why I had this set up to do. There's no strings on it right now, so I'm sorry if I feel ashamed about this. But so this is what the hip shot is, and this is what the B bender is. And if there are strings on it, I could show you.
Oh, and this is the one that he also didn't he have? He had another attachment on here with a bicycle brake cable, and he had the brake apparatus mounted on a board on the floor, so he could do that with his foot.
Yeah, but I had to remove that.
Yeah.
And that was just too weird. And so I bought that off him for $150, something like that. I don't remember.
But then you end up, it's reminding me of Leonard Bernstein's list of the 5 most difficult instruments to learn.
Uh-huh.
I won't even tell you, but one of them was pedal steel guitar.
It takes a special mind. I know 2 really good pedal steel players. We have 2 customers, really good pedal steel players, and they're geniuses.
Yeah.
And you might have to be a genius to do it. I don't know. But
it's a whole other place.
All right. So for those of you just joining us, the original stream got dropped. Luckily, some people rejoined us for this secondary stream, but it's not the link that we sent out earlier. So if you're just getting back to us or coming in, you can watch it from the beginning. You can watch it later and all that stuff. Ask a question below. So we're going to wrap it up pretty soon. So so make a comment or ask a question below if you have anything. And then if anything comes into your mind, you can leave it as a comment on a previous video, and we'll check those to see,
He will.
For material. As a matter of fact, you know what? Someone named Roger, I don't know if it's Roger Brown or just another Roger, just call it Roger, and asked last week about tone woods and which tone woods on acoustic apparently. Can we talk about tone woods?
Some.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from Chris because he was building guitars. The place to start is the norm. Steel string guitar, mahogany or rosewood body, spruce top. I mean, if you want to have a normal sounding, good sounding guitar, that's what you get.
That's the Christopher Martin the First.
Yeah. I mean, he figured it out. Whether that's right or wrong, whether that's the best sound or not the best sound, it is the sound. On an electric guitar, you have light and heavy, which we've discussed before. But if you're using the broad term of tone woods, there's nearly endless choices. There's spruce tops with koa bodies.
Well, actually, let's take a step back here to talk about Monsieur Godin. And the fact that he used cedar tops
and cherry bodies
because those are native woods
right.
in Quebec. You get them easily, work with them easily, and he changed the guitar world a bit because cedar tops were kind of like
Well, it's the traditional top of a classical guitar.
Yeah. Well, that's true too,
and that's kind of And in the wood world or the guitar / wood world. Cedar wood is considered a mature wood. It's because it's quite dry, as opposed to spruce, which is an immature wood, which is not as dry, but it will dry out over time, 10, 15, 20 years. So the effect is I used to explain Seagull guitars with their cedar tops, is what you hear is what you get. It might change a little. It might sound better than a spruce top now, might not. And that spruce top guitar, which might even be the same model of Seagull, maybe doesn't sound as good, but it might get better in 10 years. It might sound twice as good, but we don't know.
And so let's talk about this for a second. This is a good thing to wrap it up on, maybe. It'll take a minute, but wood, guitars aging. Why does a guitar become more musical as it gets played?
I'm waiting for a response from this guy Stradivarius in Italy.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
What are you doing? I don't know. The basic thing, and maybe one of the most eye-opening things I ever saw, which wasn't even connected with guitars. I met a cello builder in central New Hampshire once, and he had invented a wood drying apparatus. He had a motor that rotated a rod, and on top of that rod, like a helicopter, he clamped 10 and 12 foot, 1 by, 8 boards of whatever cellos are built out of, mahogany, I don't know.
No,
and he would spin it. No. Not real fast. No. He would just spin the wood for, a few weeks. And
get the water out to the ends.
Then chop off the wet ends, and he'd have pretty dry wood that was sort of naturally dried. So that's one theory, that the dryness of the wood makes all the difference. That as it dries, it gets lighter, it vibrates better. the wood is a dampener or a tone sink.
But even there are some theories that on a molecular level, you make the electrons kind of line up in a certain way as it works as a musical instrument.
Well,
They just get
Godin again.
repurposed.
Godin, I don't know if they ever published it, but they told me once they recommend that their customers, when they're not playing the guitar, put it in a stand in front of your stereo speaker. Just so it keeps hearing music and it's vibrating. You're a musical instrument, not a coffee table. And the other eye-opening one was the Stromberg that came in. For those of you who don't know, there were 512 Stromberg archtop guitars made in Boston in the 30s and 40s. Some of the best archtop guitars ever made, worth many, many dollars. Somebody brought one in, hadn't been touched in 40 years. This was in the 80s. Mike, who was the repairman at the time, did the work. We're all like, oh, yeah, let's string it up. I've never heard of Stromberg. And he hits a chord and like, what? It was like nothing. It sounds like an Epiphone archtop. He said, don't tell the customer it's done. He took it home for a week. He came back and started, played it like for 5 hours a day. Bam! Oh, there we go. It just went to sleep.
And forgot it was a guitar. Yeah.
Oh, you want me to make music? Yeah. Okay, I can do that.
Well, I think actually another cool thing Godin Company does is they age their, they actually will dry out their own woods.
Right.
But they have a complicated, strange way of doing it, which is they put it in a drying room, then they throw it in a snowbank in the winter, let it suck in some moisture, then they put it back in the drying room, and then so they have like a 2-year process that actually involves just like, all right, everyone, get the guitar tops outside,
right? And
they just throw it all in a snowbank, and then they bring it all back in after X number of weeks or months. I don't know the exact process, but it's kind of kooky.
Well, the age-old wood drying process was natural, and it took up to 30 years. I mean, all the builders back in the 50s, until the Beatles showed up, which is another story, had warehouses full of great guitar wood that, that's that 1927 that got snapped. And they're building guitars out of this wood. And now we're out of that wood. Now guitar wood is, we're guessing, dried for 3 to 5 years if we're lucky, or dried artificially some way.
Don't get me started on artificial drying.
Baking is the new thing.
Yeah, baking, roasting. Torrido,
deep fried. I don't know.
You bread it with a little bit of Cajun seasoning, and you deep fry it, and then you peel that breading off, and it is, and it smells like fish sticks.
All unknowns. We don't know how that's going to work. Check back in 20 years, and we'll see how they did.
Yeah, I mean, some of them they've developed more scientific, complicated processes of drying wood that hopefully are going to do it better than kiln drying.
I just realized how to wrap it up. It goes way back to truss rods.
Okay. Ooh, good. Wrap it up.
Martin didn't have truss rods in their guitars until 1970 something.
I thought it was 80 something. 82?
Was it 80s? It was, even though Gibson had invented it in 1920 something or other.
Yeah.
And most other guitars had them, and they said, we don't need truss rods. Our wood is good enough. And for the most part, it's true.
Was true.
Well, yes, until 1980, when they ran out of all the wood they had in the warehouses drying for 50 years. And now they're forced to use wood that's not dried so well. So now they have truss rods. But occasionally we do see a 1956 D18 that's got a warped neck and no truss rod. It's a tough one.
Yeah. You can put a truss rod in a neck.
Truss rod in.
That is a lot of time and money.
So yes, that's
heat and clamp. The old heat and clamp. Okay.
I think it worked for 6 months once, and then boing, it went right back where it was.
All right. So now it's wrap it up time. So thank you all for watching. Once again, leave some comments. We'll talk about stuff next time. We hope we see you next time or hear from you.
Write down some questions for next week.
Yeah, right. And then we'll have some fun. So next Wednesday, 6:00, and we'll see you then. And thanks for watching. Don't make old dude noises.
These chairs.
I gotta turn